Good afternoon, everyone. So yesterday we have started with the sixth chapter of RFD, that is automatic compatibility. We have discussed several things under this chapter. So this is the syllabus of the sixth chapter, that is automatic compatibility, the various techniques using which the electromagnetic interference can be circumvented, like grounding, shielding, bonding. Other techniques are also there, and the regulatory bodies. So we have discussed the various sources of electromagnetic interference, so-called noise. Two sources are there in general, that is man-made noise and natural noise. So under man-made noise, several devices are there which are generating noise, and natural noise is the noise that is generated due to the natural phenomenon like lightning and all. So these noises disturbs the performance of your system, and that is not desired thing. So what is required is your device should be compatible to electromagnetic environment, because your device is surrounded by electromagnetic interferences, so-called noise. So it should be compatible to those noises surrounding to your equipment. So how to make your device compatible to the electromagnetic environment? So what is electromagnetic compatibility? It is nothing but the ability of a device to function effectively in electromagnetic environment, making sure that your device is not becoming a source of electromagnetic interference. That means it should not radiate electric field or magnetic field or electromagnetic waves into the space that may disturb the performance of other devices, or the radiations or emissions in the form of electric field or magnetic field or electromagnetic waves generated by your device should be within the acceptable limits. Within the acceptable limits means several regulatory bodies are there. They are defining the threshold limits for all these parameters. So the emission happening from your device should be less than the threshold defined by those regulatory bodies. Your device should not be susceptible to those electromagnetic interferences. So as to achieve this, the emission happening from various devices needs to be controlled, and there are several techniques using which one can control the emission. So grounding, shielding, bonding, filtering, these are the commonly used techniques to reduce the interference in a system. And other approaches are also there. One can use conducting gaskets and all, surge arrestor, isolating transformers and all, to reduce the interference in the system. So we'll start with the grounding and shielding. These are the different regulatory bodies which basically controls the emission level of equipments. Emission happening from your device can be controlled in the early stage only, in the designing phase only, not after the designing, because you'll be having a lot of options to control the electromagnetic interference when you are designing the device. Once you design the device, you may not have a lot of opportunities or options to control the emissions. So that is why it is always recommended to control the emission at design level only. So two types of emissions are generally happening. The emissions happening from the conducting wires, called as conducted emissions, and the emission happening from the antennas, called as radiated emission. How to measure these emissions? The radiated emissions, that is the radiation from the antenna, can be measured by using anechoic chambers, which is very costly, and the conducted emissions can be measured using a device so-called LISN, line impedance stabilization network, and other devices also there, that is a special spectrum analyzer is there, using which one can measure the conducted emission. Please remember, conducted emission is always measured in near field. However, radiated emission is always measured in far field. Near field means the region which is less than 2d square by lambda on your device, and far field is the region which is greater than 2d square by lambda from your device. So what is grounding? We have started with this thing. So grounding or earthing is one and the same thing. We are grounding any point on the circuit, means you are making the potential at that point equals to 0. So what exactly grounding offers? What for grounding has to be done? So the grounding generally provides or offers a low impedance path for a faulty current or leakage current to bypass, so that your system can be made safe from those leakage or faulty currents that is there on your system. So to understand the concept of grounding and shielding, A simple example, let us consider a simple example wherein we have two concentric spheres of radius r1 and r2. The charge on the inner sphere is plus q. The charge on the outer sphere is q dash, which is an unknown charge. Now, we are grounding outer sphere at point P. You can see over here, at point P, we have connected a ground. So, what is the definition of ground? Grounding simply makes the potential at that point 0. So, potential on the sphere or potential at point P, that is Vp, is equals to 0. What is the net potential at point P? That is the potential due to the 2 point charges, the point charge that is there on the inner conducting sphere and the point charge that is there on the outer conducting sphere. And potential due to point charge q at any distance r is known to us. The formula for calculating that potential is q divided by 4 pi epsilon r, where 1 upon 4 pi epsilon is nothing but the constant of proportionality, k. You have studied this in electromagnetic engineering. So the net potential at point P, which is grounded, is equals to 0, that is Vp is equals to 0, and net potential at point P is potential due to point charge q plus potential due to point charge q dash, where k is 1 upon 4 pi epsilon, that is equals to 0. So we are simply rearranging these terms, shift this term to the right hand side, so it will become negative, k and r2 will get cancelled, and I'll get q is equals to q dash, or q dash is minus times q. What does that indicate? When I'm grounding the outer sphere, outer conducting sphere, the charge that is appearing on the outer conducting sphere will have same magnitude as that of the inner conducting sphere, but the polarity of the charge is opposite. This concept is very, very important from understanding the grounding concepts point of view. So we'll talk about this concept little later, but try to remember this thing that when two concentric spheres or two concentric conductors are there and the outer conductor is grounded, then the charge on the outer conductor is always equals to the charge on the inner conductor, but the polarity is opposite. So we'll discuss this concept from grounding and shielding point of view in coming slides. So now we'll discuss the second scenario. In this case, we have grounded outer conductor. What happens if I ground the inner conductor? So now you can see same concentric spherical conductor system we are having with radius r1 and r2. Now charge on the outer conductor is known to you, that is say plus q, and charge on the inner conductor is unknown, that is say q dash, that we have to find out. So what we are doing over here is we are grounding the inner conductor at point P. So grounding the inner conductor at point P means that grounding wire will basically provides you low resistance path for the faulty current to flow through it. So what happens at point P? The potential at point P will be equals to 0. So Vp is equals to 0. So what is the net potential at point P? Potential due to point charge q dash and potential due to point charge q. So what is the potential due to point charge q dash at point P? It is again same, q dash divided by 4 pi epsilon r1. And what is the potential at point P due to charge q, which is located at a distance r2 from the center of the sphere, which is the reference point. So that is k into q divided by r2. So k is again 1 upon 4 pi epsilon. So to find out the relation between q and q dash, we are simply rearranging these terms. I'm shifting the second term to the right hand side, and what I'll get is q dash is equals to this k will get cancelled with this k. So q dash will be equals to r1 by r2 times q with minus sign. So r1 is the radius of the inner sphere and r2 is the radius of the outer conducting sphere. So r1 is always less than r2. Therefore, the charge on the outer conductor is always less in magnitude as that of the charge on the inner conductor, because r1 by r2 is less than 1. And the polarity of the two charges is opposite. Try to remember these concepts, which are useful in understanding the grounding and shielding concepts in later slides. So what for grounding is required? As I have mentioned earlier, grounding is not only required for safety of your equipment and human beings from the lethal electric shocks, but also to reduce the electromagnetic noise that is there in your system. So to understand the importance and the concept of grounding and shielding, let us consider a cabling system. A cabling system is nothing but simply a transmission line, a cable, a conducting wire. If the length of the conducting wire is comparable to wavelength, that conducting wire starts behaving more like an antenna. It essentially acts like an antenna, and it starts radiating energy into the space, and that energy may get induced into the neighboring equipments and it may degrade the performance of the neighboring equipments, and it may pick up energy from the neighboring equipments also. So while designing your device, make sure that the cable length that you are using is much smaller than wavelength. Typically it should be less than 1/20th of a wavelength. Now if I have say two conductors placed close to each other, when current is flowing through one conductor, electric field and magnetic field will be generated by this conductor. That electric field and magnetic field may get coupled into the neighboring conductor, and that may disturb the performance of the neighboring conductor or neighboring equipment. So in this slide we are considering the different types of couplings that may happen surrounding two equipments. Three types of couplings are there, say capacitive coupling, inductive coupling, and electromagnetic coupling. So when two conducting wires are separated by a distance d in any medium, say free space, current is flowing through conducting wire 1, say, so it will produce certain electric field. That electric field may induce into this wire, and that will give you some capacitance. So the two wires are coupled through a capacitance. So that is capacitive coupling, which is also called as electrostatic coupling. Now a current is flowing through this wire. As per the right hand thumb rule, it will produce magnetic field surrounding to this wire. That magnetic field may get coupled into the neighboring conducting wire. That magnetic field gives you inductance between the mutual inductance between the two conducting wires. That mutual inductance will affect the performance of the neighboring equipment. That is not desired. Or the device, if the wire length is quite large, then it will produce electromagnetic waves, where electric field and magnetic field both are there and they are perpendicular to each other. And that may induce into the neighboring wire or neighboring equipment, and that may degrade the performance of the neighboring equipment. We'll discuss these scenarios one by one, but please remember, in equipments, the E and H fields are considered separately for analysis in the near field. And while for electromagnetic waves, we are considering electromagnetic waves in far field for its analysis. So we'll first discuss the capacitive coupling. So assume a two conductor system is there. This is conductor 1, you can see, which is excited with a voltage V1, and the conductor 2 is placed next to this particular conductor 1, and the conductor 2 is connected with a resistance R with respect to ground. You can see the resistance R is connected to this conductor 2 with respect to ground. Please remember, this C1G is nothing but the stray capacitance that is there between the conductor 1 and ground. Conductor 1 and ground, these are simply two conductors separated by dielectric. So some capacitance will form between them, and that capacitance is represented by C1G. Similarly, C2G is the capacitance between conductor 2 and ground. So these are not physically present, but they are appearing automatically, especially at high frequencies. These values are very high. These capacitances, please remember, these are stray capacitances. So when I'm exciting the conductor 1 with voltage V1, what will happen? The electric field from conductor 1 will get coupled with conductor 2, and that causes a coupling capacitor between the conductor 1 and conductor 2. That coupling capacitor is given by C12. The C12 basically a capacitance formed between conductor 1 and conductor 2. So this capacitance should not be there. This coupling should not be there. This coupling will not be there when your conducting wire is not generating electric field or magnetic field. But it is we cannot control this emission of electric field and magnetic field, because these are the inherent properties of the conductor. Any current is flowing through a conducting material, it will produce electric field and magnetic field to its surrounding. Those are the inherent properties of the conducting materials. We cannot change them. So this coupling capacitance will be there, and because of this coupling capacitor, the performance of the neighboring system, which is conductor 2, which is connected to some electronic system, may degrade. So this C12 should not be there, ideally speaking. If C12 is not there, the performance of the conductor 2 will not affect at all because of the performance of the conductor 1. So how to reduce this capacitance, or what is the voltage that is getting induced on this conductor? The voltage that is induced on this conductor is given by this expression. That is the noise voltage. It should not be there. That is J omega R C12 into V1. So it is this noise voltage that is getting induced onto the second conductor is frequency dependent. It is directly proportional to frequency. So higher is the frequency. If you increase the frequency of the input signal that you are applying to conductor 1, the electric field will be more stronger, more coupling will be there from conductor 1 to conductor 2. So higher value of capacitance will be there, higher value of frequency will be there. So noise voltage produced on conductor 2 will be higher, and it will deteriorate the performance of the second conductor significantly. Therefore, one can control the value of the resistance that is connected to conductor 2 with respect to ground, and the coupling capacitance between conductor 1 and 2 can be controlled to reduce the noise voltage. In general, we cannot change the frequency and V1. Whenever you are designing any device, the operating frequency of the device is fixed. So we cannot play with the frequency, it is going to be fixed. And the voltage applied, the threshold values of the voltage that we are applying to the device, those are also fixed. So generally the voltage and frequency that we are using to excite the device are fixed. We cannot change them. So if I want to control the noise voltage that is appearing on conductor 2, I can either control the value of the resistance that is connected to conductor 2, or I can reduce the value of the coupling capacitor C12. So how do we achieve this? Please remember, this noise voltage expression is applicable for this value of R. If R is much smaller than this particular factor, obviously if you select R as low as possible, the noise voltage induced on the second conductor will be as low as possible, and the system will work effectively, conductor 2 system. So one can choose the R value as low as possible in conductor 2 system to reduce the noise induced on the second conductor system, or one can decrease the coupling capacitance that is getting generated from conductor 1 to conductor 2. So how to reduce the coupling capacitance between conductor 1 and conductor 2? This coupling capacitor C12. How to reduce this? It's a parallel plate capacitor, a parallel wire capacitor, two conducting plates separated by dielectric or two conducting wires separated by dielectric. Use parallel capacitance, and the parallel capacitance expression you know very well. C is equals to epsilon A by D, where D is nothing but the spacing between the two conductors. So this particular C12 can be reduced by placing the two conductors far apart. So D is increasing, therefore the capacitance forming between the two conductors will decrease. So that way one can eventually decrease the noise voltage on conductor 2 by reducing the C12. Or other way, simply you can change the orientation of these two conductors. One conductor is like this, one conductor if you place orthogonal to conductor 1. You have studied linearly polarized antennas, something called monopole antennas and dipole antennas. So monopole antenna you have studied, it doesn't radiate over here. Wi-Fi antenna that are there, which doesn't radiate over here and not radiating over here, it is radiating everywhere over here. So the two antennas are say Wi-Fi antennas, they are radiating equally in all directions. The two antennas are within the coverage area of each other. What will happen? Communication will happen between the two antennas. One is transmitting, another is receiving. So the communication will happen between the two antennas. But if I'm placing this antenna like this, receiving antenna, though the two antennas are within the coverage range of each other, communication will not happen between them, because this antenna, which is your receiving antenna, when it is in transmitting mode, it will not radiate over here. So when it is in receiving mode, it will not receive anything from this, because the polarization is orthogonal over here. So you can place two conductors orthogonal to each other so as to reduce the value of the coupling capacitance, thereby reducing the noise voltage inducing on second conductor. That is another approach. The third approach is you can place some shielding material on conductor 2 to protect conductor 2 from electromagnetic interference happening from other devices. So we'll discuss the third scenario, that is shielding. Please remember, this expression of noise voltage is applicable for lower value of resistance. If resistance value is much greater than this factor, then what will happen? Noise voltage appearing on conductor 2 will be this C12, which is nothing but the coupling capacitor from conductor 1 to 2, and addition of the capacitances C12 plus C2G. C2G is nothing but the capacitance from conductor 2 to ground, into V1 is the voltage applied to conductor 1. Please remember, this equation is applicable only for R greater than this factor. This factor is same as of previous. Now, to avoid this capacitive coupling, one can shield the conductor 2. We are shielding the conductor 2. That means the conductor 2, you can see over here, this is the dotted line, which is your conductor 2, is placed inside a conducting material. A hollow conducting material is there, in which you can fix a dielectric also. So this is a hollow conductor which is placed over the conductor 2. That means this particular hollow conductor acts as a shield to the conductor 2. So what will happen? Please remember, in this case we are assuming that the conductor 2 is completely inside the shield. So what will happen in this case? Now, as this conductor 2 is completely inside the shield, we cannot connect any resistance to the conductor 2. So conductor 2 is not connected to any resistance. Previously conductor 2 was connected to resistance R with respect to ground. Now in this case the conductor 2 is entirely inside the shield, so we cannot connect any resistance. So what will happen now when I'm exciting conductor 1? Capacitance will form between conductor 1 and the shield, not between conductor 1 and conductor 2. Please remember this, because conductor 2 is inside the shield which is made up of conductor, and electric field cannot pass through metals. So electric field cannot pass through the shield, and therefore there will not be any capacitance forming between conductor 1 and conductor 2. Therefore the direct coupling between conductor 1 and conductor 2 is avoided using this shielding. CHG is nothing but the capacitance that is forming between the shield and the ground. C1G is same as of capacitance forming between conductor 1 and ground. So instead of C12 in previous case, now we have C1S, that is the coupling capacitor forming between conductor 1 and shield. So what will happen in this case? What is the noise voltage that is appearing on conductor 2 in this case? This is a shield which is made up of conductor. So on this shield, some voltage will appear. The conductor 2 and shield, between conductor 2 and shield, some coupling capacitor will form. And there is no other impedance or resistance is present, or the conductor 2 is not terminated with any other impedances. Therefore, whatever noise voltage appearing on the shield, same noise voltage will appear on the conductor 2. So what is the noise voltage that is appearing on the shield? Vs is C1S divided by C1S plus CSG into V1. This expression is very similar to this expression. Only in previous case, the coupling capacitor was from conductor 1 to 2. In this case, it is from conductor 1 to shield. So C12 is replaced by C1S. And C2G was the coupling capacitor from conductor 2 to ground. In this case, the coupling capacitor from shield to ground. That is the only difference. So this noise voltage will induce on the shield, and the same noise voltage will appear on the conductor 2, because conductor 2 is not terminated with any of the impedances. So only impedance that is there between conductor 2 and shield is C2S. Therefore, whatever Vs voltage is getting induced on the shield, same voltage will induce on conductor 2, and that is nothing but the noise voltage. So even if I am providing shielding to conductor 2, nothing is changing. Same noise voltage is appearing on the conductor 2. So how to reduce this voltage? If I connect the shield of the conductor 2 to a ground, what will happen? The shield voltage goes to 0. And if the shield voltage goes to 0, shield voltage is same as of the noise voltage that is appearing on conductor 2. Noise voltage appearing on conductor 2 will also be equals to 0. Therefore, one can reduce the noise or the electric field coupling not only by using shielding approach, but we have to use grounding approach. When we are shielding the conductor, it is not protecting the conductor from electromagnetic interferences, but it will protect the conductor 2 from electromagnetic interference only when the shield of conductor 2 is grounded. The shielding becomes meaningless without grounding. So if you are not grounding the shield, the potential appearing on conductor 2 will be high enough, and that will be sufficient to deteriorate the performance of the conductor 2. So shielding becomes meaningless without grounding. So shielding and grounding are equally important. The second scenario we'll discuss over here. Now the length of the conductor is little larger than the shield length. That means the conductor length is extending beyond the shield. You can see your extra part of the conductor 2 is coming out of the shield. So what will happen because of this? Some coupling capacitance will form between conductor 1 and conductor 2 or the extended length, that is C12. Some capacitance will form between this extended length of the conductor 2 and ground, that is C2G. Other capacitances will be same as the previous case, that is C1S, that is the capacitance between conductor 1 and shield, CSG, that is the capacitance between shield and ground. Now here we have two additional capacitances, that is C12 and C2G, which were not there in previous case where the conductor 2 was completely inside the shield. So this C12 and C2G, even if the shield is grounded, because of the extended length of the conductor 2, additional capacitances are forming between conductor 1 and conductor 2 and conductor 2 and ground. This will cause a noise voltage on conductor 2, and that will deteriorate the performance of the conductor. That is not desired. And what is the noise voltage that is appearing on the conductor 2? Very similar to previous example. It is Vn. Now in this case we have two capacitances, C12 and C2G. So that's why it is same as the previous expression, only the three values of capacitances are there. So this is the noise voltage that is appearing on the conductor 2. So while shielding and grounding, you should make sure that you're shielding the conductor properly. You're shielding the entire conductor so as to avoid the interference happening from conductor 1 to conductor 2. One ground is required for a cable whose length is not greater than 1/20th of a wavelength. And multiple grounds are required if the cable lengths are comparable to wavelength. So this is very important concept. Grounding and shielding I have tried to explain together. Now we'll talk about the inductive coupling. This is about capacitive coupling. So inductive coupling is very similar to capacitive couplings. Only in this case we are considering magnetic field. In previous example we were talking about electric field coupling only. Now we are talking about magnetic field coupling. So again we have two conductors. Current is flowing through one conductor. As per right hand thumb rule, magnetic field will be generated to its surrounding. That magnetic field may get induced into the neighboring conductor, and mutual inductance will form between the two conductors. What is inductance? The magnetic flux linkages per unit current is nothing but the inductance. So you can see the definition of inductance is magnetic flux. Phi is nothing but the magnetic flux linkages per unit current gives the inductance. So if I have two conductors placed close to each other, then the mutual inductance forming because of the mutual coupling of electromagnetic waves from conductor 1 to conductor 2 is M12. This is the mutual inductance between conductor 1 and 2. Is phi12 divided by I1. What is phi12? It is the magnetic field that is getting coupled from conductor 1 to conductor 2 per unit current applied to conductor 1. So the noise voltage that is appearing over a closed loop area of a conductor 2 is given by this expression. This is from Faraday's law that is well known to you. This is a magnetic potential, scalar magnetic potential. You can calculate this potential by using magnetic flux density B bar, and we know magnetic flux density and magnetic field intensity H bar and B bar we can calculate easily. In fact, we have derived the expressions of H bar and B bar due to several conductors. If we have infinitely long current carrying conductor, H bar due to infinitely long current carrying conductor is I by 2 pi R. We have studied this in electromagnetic engineering. So you can see this magnetic flux density is B bar, which is mu times H bar, and that is around I by 2 pi R, mu times I by 2 pi R. So one can calculate the magnetic potential appearing on conductor 2. What we can do, we can offer shielding to the source which is generating electromagnetic fields, that is conductor 1. So what we are doing, you can see this black dot over here, which is nothing but a conducting wire that is going inside the page. So current is flowing through this particular conducting wire. So it is going like this. The conducting wire is going like into the page. So magnetic field will be always in the form of closed loops, and electric field due to infinitely long line charge is rho L divided by 2 pi epsilon R into AR bar. That means electric field will be always in the radial direction. So you can see the solid lines are electric field lines, and that are going radially outward direction. And the magnetic field lines are in closed loops. The dotted line indicates the magnetic field surrounding to this conductor. Now we need to restrict this magnetic field so as to avoid the coupling of magnetic field into the neighboring conductors. So what we are doing, we are enclosing this black dot, which is your conductor that is going into the page, by a shield. So you can see this is a shaded part of the non-magnetic conductor we are using. Non-magnetic materials are those materials which are not attracted by magnetic fields. So this is a non-magnetic conductor where electric fields are terminating. Electric field cannot pass through this shield, and this non-magnetic conductor is grounded. So what will happen over here? When I'm grounding the outer conductor, what is the charge that is appearing on the outer conductor? The charge that is appearing on the outer conductor will have same magnitude as that of the charge that is there on the inner conductor, but the polarity of the charge is opposite. So if the charge on the inner conductor is plus Q, then the charge on the outer conductor will be minus Q. So what will happen? If the current on the inner conductor is going inside the page, the current on the outer conductor, which is your shield, which is grounded, it will go in opposite direction. So the shield will produce magnetic field which is having same magnitude as that of the magnetic field produced by the inner conductor, but the direction of the magnetic fields are opposite because of the directions of the currents on the two conductors are opposite. Therefore, the field generated, magnetic field generated by the shield will cancel the magnetic field generated by the inner conductor, and therefore there is no question of coupling of magnetic field into the neighboring equipment. So this is how one can reduce the magnetic field coupling. You can see the final diagram over here. Inner conductor, outer conductor which is shield and which is grounded. So no magnetic field is seen outside this shield because which is grounded. The shield current will cancel the magnetic field generated by the current that is there on the inner conductor. So please remember, to prevent radiation of magnetic field from a conductor which is grounded at both the ends, the conductor should be shielded and the shield should be grounded at both the ends.